In a quiet little town surrounded by green hills and winding rivers, there lived a young woman named Emily Carter. She was 24 years old, with soft brown eyes that always seemed to sparkle, even when life felt heavy. Emily worked as a waitress at a small diner called the Cozy Corner, which was famous for its steaming cups of coffee, golden pancakes, and warm apple pie. The diner wasn't fancy. It had chipped paint on the walls and mismatched chairs, but it was the kind of place where people came not just for food, but for comfort. Emily loved her job because it allowed her to meet all sorts of people. Some were regulars who stopped by every morning before work. Others were travelers passing through town. No matter who walked through the door, Emily greeted them with a bright smile and a cheerful, "Welcome." Her coworkers often teased her about how hard she worked, but Emily didn't mind. She knew that tips from satisfied customers were essential to making ends meet. Life hadn't been easy for her, and she understood the value of earning an honest living. Her days started early at 5 o'clock in the morning and ended late at night after the diner closed. Between shifts, she would pick up extra hours cleaning offices or babysitting neighborhood kids. It wasn't glamorous, but Emily never complained. She dreamed of saving enough money to move out of her tiny apartment someday and maybe even go back to school. But for now, her focus was on surviving day by day. One chilly winter evening, as snow began to fall outside, Emily was busy serving tables at the diner. The air inside was warm, filled with the smell of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread. Most of the customers had already left, except for a few stragglers enjoying their meals. As Emily cleared plates and refilled coffee mugs, she noticed an elderly man sitting alone in the corner booth near the window. He was Mr. Thompson, a widower who came to the diner almost every Thursday night. Everyone in town knew his story. He had lost his wife 2 years ago, and since then he spent most of his time alone. That night, however, something about Mr. Thompson seemed different. His shoulders sagged more than usual, and his hands trembled slightly as he stirred sugar into his coffee. Emily watched him for a moment, feeling a pang of sadness. She couldn't imagine what it must feel like to lose someone you loved so deeply. Gathering her courage, she approached his table with a gentle smile. "Evening, Mr. Thompson," she said softly, placing a fresh napkin beside his cup. "How are you doing tonight?" He looked up at her, startled, as if he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him. For a moment he hesitated, then sighed. "I'm all right, dear," he replied, though his voice betrayed the emptiness he carried inside. "Just thinking." Emily tilted her head, sensing that he needed someone to listen. "Thinking about what?" she asked kindly, leaning against the edge of the table. Mr. Thompson stared out the frosty window for a long moment before speaking. "About my wife," he admitted quietly. "We used to love coming here together, especially during the holidays. We'd share a plate of pie and talk about everything under the sun." A faint smile crossed his face, but it quickly faded. "Now, I come here alone and it feels hollow." Emily's heart ached hearing this. She could see the loneliness etched into his face, the weight of memories too precious to let go, yet too painful to hold on to. Without thinking twice, she made a decision. When Mr. Thompson asked for the bill, Emily slipped it into her pocket instead of handing it to him. Then she added a slice of warm apple pie to a takeout box and placed it on his table. "This one's on me," she said brightly, trying to lighten the mood. "And here's some pie to take home. Maybe it'll remind you of those happy times with your wife." Mr. Thompson blinked in surprise, his eyes misting over. "You didn't have to do that," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Wanted to," Emily replied simply, patting his hand. "Everyone deserves a little kindness now and then." As Mr. Thompson left the diner that night, clutching the box of pie, Emily felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't much, just a free meal and a friendly gesture, but she hoped it might bring a bit of light to his lonely world. Little did she know, her act of kindness was about to set off a chain reaction that would change her life forever. Meanwhile, across town, a wealthy businessman named Richard Langston was preparing for bed. Though he lived in a sprawling mansion, filled with expensive art and luxury cars, Richard rarely felt content. He had built his fortune from scratch, rising from humble beginnings to become one of the richest men in the country. Yet despite his success, he often found himself wondering if there was more to life than money. Richard had known Mr. Thompson for years. They had met through a charity event and bonded over their shared love of books and history. Every week, Richard checked in on his old friend to make sure he was doing okay. That night, curious about why Mr. Thompson seemed unusually emotional during their phone call, Richard decided to visit the diner the following day. What he discovered there would leave a lasting impression on both him and Emily. The next morning, Emily woke up to the sound of her alarm blaring at 6 o'clock. She groaned, reaching out to silence it before dragging herself out of bed. Her body ached from the long hours she had worked the previous night, but there was no time to rest. After quickly getting dressed in her uniform, black pants, white shirt, and sneakers, she grabbed a granola bar for breakfast and headed out into the cold winter air. As she walked toward the diner, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Thompson. She wondered if he had enjoyed the pie she sent home with him. Had her small gesture made any difference? She hoped so, but deep down, she knew that one act of kindness wouldn't magically erase years of loneliness. Still, even the tiniest spark of light could brighten someone's day, and that thought kept her spirits high as she pushed open the door to the cozy corner. Inside, the diner was already bustling with activity. The cook was flipping pancakes on the griddle, steam rising from the stove, while another waitress bustled around taking orders. Emily tied her apron around her waist and got to work, refilling coffee cups and jotting down requests for eggs sunny side up or extra crispy bacon. Despite the early hour, the place was packed with customers eager to start their day with hearty meals. Around 10 o'clock, just as the breakfast rush began, to wind down, the bell above the door jingled. A tall man wearing an expensive-looking coat stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor. He scanned the room briefly before approaching the counter where Emily stood. Something about him seemed out of place in this cozy little diner. His tailored suit and confident demeanor hinted at wealth and importance. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "Are you Emily Carter?" Emily blinked in surprise. "Yes, that's me," she replied cautiously. "Can I help you?" The man smiled warmly, extending his hand. "My name is Richard Langston. I'd like to speak with you, if you have a moment." For a split second, Emily froze. Who was this man, and why did he want to talk to her? Was he here because of something she'd done wrong? Her mind raced with possibilities, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Of course," she said, shaking his hand. "Let me just finish up here and I'll be right with you." Once she handed off her current order to a coworker, Emily led Richard to a quiet corner booth near the back of the diner. As they sat down, she noticed how different he looked compared to the usual patrons. His clothes were immaculate, his posture perfect, and his watch gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Clearly, this wasn't someone who frequented diners like hers. "So, what brings you here, Mr. Langston?" Emily asked politely, trying not to let her nerves show. Richard leaned forward slightly, his expression serious yet kind. "I'm here because of Mr. Thompson," he explained. "He told me about what you did for him last night, how you bought him dinner and gave him pie to take home. I wanted to thank you personally." Emily felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Oh, it was nothing," she said quickly, waving a hand dismissively. "Just a small thing, really." But Richard shook his head firmly. "It wasn't nothing," he insisted. "What you did meant a great deal to him. You reminded him that people still care, even when life feels overwhelming. And frankly, acts of kindness like yours are rare these days. They deserve recognition." Emily didn't know what to say. No one had ever praised her for something so simple before. Most of her life revolved around working hard and staying invisible, blending into the background. Hearing Richard's words made her feel seen. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe her efforts mattered more than she realized. After a moment of silence, Richard continued. "I run a foundation dedicated to helping communities in need," he explained. "We focus on projects that improve education, healthcare, and economic opportunities for struggling families. When I heard about your kindness toward Mr. Thompson, It reminded me of the kind of person we need leading some of our initiatives. Emily's eyes widened in shock. Wait, are you offering me a job? She asked hesitantly. Yes, Richard replied, nodding. Not just any job, though. I want you to oversee a new program aimed at supporting families in this town. Your compassion and understanding would be invaluable assets. Plus, you already know the community better than anyone else. Emily stared at him, stunned. This had to be a dream. How could someone like her, a waitress with no formal qualifications, possibly lead such an important project? Surely Richard must have mistaken her for someone else. I don't know what to say, she stammered finally. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for something like that. Richard chuckled softly. Qualifications aren't everything, he said. Sometimes the best leaders are those who genuinely care about others. That's something you clearly possess in abundance. Trust me, you won't be doing this alone. I'll provide training and resources to help you succeed. Despite her doubts, Emily found herself intrigued by the idea. The thought of making a real difference in her community excited her. Maybe this was her chance to step out of the shadows and do something meaningful. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, she said, her voice trembling with determination. I'll give it a try, Richard smiled, visibly pleased. Excellent. We'll start tomorrow morning. I'll send a car to pick you up at 8. As Richard left the diner, Emily sat there for a long time, staring at the empty booth where he had been sitting. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and fear. What had she just agreed to? Could she really handle such a big responsibility? But beneath all the uncertainty, there was also a flicker of hope. For the first time in years, she dared to imagine a future beyond the diner, a future where she could create change instead of simply surviving. That evening, after her shift ended, Emily called her best friend, Sarah, to share the news. At first, Sarah laughed, convinced Emily was joking. But when she realized it was true, she squealed with delight. "This is amazing," Sarah exclaimed. "You're going to be incredible at this, Em. Just wait and see." Encouraged by Sarah's enthusiasm, Emily began preparing for her new role. She spent hours researching Richard's foundation online, learning about its mission and past projects. Each article she read filled her with a growing sense of purpose. By the time the sun rose the next morning, she was ready, or as ready as she could be, to take the first step into this unexpected chapter of her life. When the sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment building at exactly 8 o'clock, Emily took a deep breath and stepped inside. Little did she know this ride would take her far beyond the boundaries of her small town, opening doors she never dreamed possible. The sleek black car glided smoothly through the snowy streets, its tires crunching softly against the icy pavement. Emily sat in the back seat, clutching her coat tightly around her as she stared out the window. The world outside looked calm and quiet, but inside her mind a storm raged. What was she getting herself into? Just yesterday she had been serving pancakes and refilling coffee cups at the Cozy Corner. Today, she was heading to meet with one of the wealthiest men in the country to discuss leading a major community initiative. It felt surreal, like stepping into a movie where nothing made sense. When the car finally pulled up in front of an elegant glass building downtown, Emily hesitated for a moment before stepping out. The structure towered above her, reflecting the pale morning sunlight. She adjusted her scarf nervously and followed Richard Langston, who greeted her warmly at the entrance. He led her through polished marble floors and past rows of busy employees typing furiously on their computers. Everyone seemed so focused, so professional. It was a far cry from the cozy chaos of the diner. "This is our headquarters," Richard explained as they entered a spacious conference room on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the town below, blanketed in fresh snow. "We'll go over everything here." Emily nodded, trying to appear confident despite feeling completely out of place. Richard gestured for her to sit down, then handed her a thick folder filled with documents. "These are details about the program you'll be overseeing," he said. "It's called Community Roots. Our goal is to provide resources, food, education, job training to families struggling to make ends meet. As Emily flipped through the pages, her eyes widened. There were charts showing poverty rates in the area, lists of potential partners like local schools and charities, and even mock-ups of flyers advertising workshops and events. It all sounded incredible, but also overwhelming. How could she possibly manage something this big? I know it might seem daunting, Richard said, noticing her expression. But remember, you won't be doing this alone. We have a team ready to support you every step of the way. Your job will be to connect with people, listen to their needs, and find creative solutions. That's why I chose you, Emily. You understand what it means to care for others. His words gave her a small boost of confidence. Maybe she didn't need fancy degrees or years of experience. Maybe all she needed was the willingness to learn and the determination to help. Taking a deep breath, she nodded again. Okay, she said firmly. Let's do this. Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into her new role with everything she had. Every morning she arrived at the foundation's office early, eager to dive into the day's tasks. She attended meetings, brainstormed ideas with the team, and visited neighborhoods to talk to residents about their challenges. At first, many people were skeptical. Who was this young woman claiming to bring change? But Emily's sincerity quickly won them over. She listened patiently, asked thoughtful questions, and promised to fight for their voices to be heard. One of her first projects was organizing a food drive. With the holidays approaching, she knew how hard it could be for families struggling to put meals on the table. Working alongside volunteers, she set up collection points at churches, schools, and businesses across town. Donations poured in: boxes of canned goods, bags of rice, jars of peanut butter. By the time Christmas rolled around, they had enough supplies to distribute baskets to hundreds of households. On the day of the distribution event, Emily stood outside the community center, watching as families lined up to receive their packages. Children laughed as they played in the snow, while parents exchanged grateful smiles. Seeing the joy on their faces filled Emily with a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. For once, she wasn't just surviving. She was thriving, and helping others thrive too. But it wasn't always easy. There were days when things went wrong, when deliveries were delayed, funding fell short, or disagreements arose within the team. During those moments, Emily doubted herself. Was she cut out for this? Could she really handle the pressure? Yet, each time she considered giving up, someone would remind her of the impact she was making. A single mother thanked her for providing groceries that lasted through the month. A teenager told her how the free tutoring sessions helped him pass his exams. These stories kept her going, fueling her resolve to keep pushing forward. Meanwhile, word of Emily's work began to spread beyond the town. Local newspapers wrote articles about the success of the Community Roots program, praising her leadership and dedication. Soon, reporters started calling, asking for interviews. Emily initially declined, uncomfortable with the attention, but Richard encouraged her to share her story. People need to see that anyone can make a difference, he told her. Your journey inspires hope. Reluctantly, Emily agreed to speak with a journalist from a regional magazine. Sitting in the diner where it all began, she recounted her experiences, from working long hours as a waitress to taking on her new role at the foundation. The article, titled "From Waitress to Changemaker," captured hearts across the state. Readers were moved by her humility and resilience, and donations to the foundation skyrocketed. With newfound support, Emily expanded the program's reach. She launched workshops teaching skills like budgeting, resume writing, and even basics, computer literacy. She partnered with local businesses to create job opportunities for unemployed residents. And she organized monthly gatherings where neighbors could come together to celebrate their progress and build stronger connections. Through it all, Emily remained grounded. Despite the growing recognition, she refused to let success go to her head. She still visited the diner occasionally, chatting with old friends and catching up on gossip. She continued helping out wherever she could, whether it was babysitting for a coworker or volunteering at the shelter. To her, kindness wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up day after day and doing what you could to lift others up. By spring, the transformation in the town was undeniable. Families who had once struggled to afford basic necessities now had stable incomes and brighter futures. Kids who used to skip school regularly were excelling in their classes. Neighbors who barely spoke to each other before were now collaborating on community projects. The ripple effect of Emily's efforts was spreading farther than she ever imagined. Yet, even as she celebrated these victories, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to do. Her journey had taught her that change wasn't something that happened overnight. It required patience, persistence, and unwavering belief in the power of compassion. And though she had come a long way since that snowy evening when she bought dinner for Mr. Thompson, she knew this was only the beginning. Little did she know, however, that her story was about to take another unexpected turn, one that would challenge her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. As summer approached, Emily found herself busier than ever. The success of the Community Roots program had brought new opportunities and new challenges. Donations were pouring in faster than anyone expected, and the foundation received requests from neighboring towns asking for help starting similar initiatives. While this was exciting, it also meant more responsibility for Emily. She spent long hours meeting with leaders from other communities, planning strategies, and training volunteers. Every day felt like a whirlwind of activity, but she loved it. For the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. One sunny afternoon, as Emily sat in her office reviewing reports, there was a knock on the door. It was Richard Langston, carrying a folder under his arm and wearing an expression that suggested big news. "Emily," he said, closing the door behind him, "we need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat. Had something gone wrong? Was the program facing problems she hadn't anticipated? Trying to mask her nerves, she smiled politely. "Sure, what's up?" Richard took a seat across from her and placed the folder on the desk. "I've been thinking about your work over the past few months," he began. "You've done incredible things here, not just for this town, but for the entire region. Your ability to connect with people and inspire change is remarkable." Emily blushed, unsure how to respond. Compliments still made her uncomfortable even after all this time. "Thank you," she managed to say. "But I couldn't have done any of it without the team's support." "That's true," Richard agreed. "But leadership starts with one person, and that person is you, which brings me to why I'm here." He opened the folder and slid a document toward her. "We're expanding the foundation nationally, and we want you to lead the expansion." Emily stared at the paper in front of her, unable to process what he was saying. National expansion? Lead it? Her mind raced with questions. How could someone like her, someone who barely finished high school, possibly take on such a massive role? Surely Richard must be mistaken. I don't know what to say," she stammered finally. "This is huge. Are you sure I'm the right person for this?" Richard leaned forward, his eyes steady and reassuring. "Absolutely. You've already proven yourself. Look at what you've accomplished here. Imagine what you could do on a larger scale. Of course, it won't be easy. There will be obstacles, and you'll need to adapt. But I believe in you, Emily. More importantly, you should believe in yourself." His words struck a chord deep within her. All her life she had doubted her abilities, convinced that she wasn't smart or capable enough to achieve great things. But now, sitting in this room with Richard, surrounded by evidence of her hard work, she started to wonder, what if he was right? What if she could do this? "Okay," she said slowly, her voice trembling with determination. "I'll try." Richard grinned. "That's all I ask. Now let's get started." Over the next several weeks, Emily immersed herself in preparations for the national rollout. She traveled to different cities, meeting with local leaders and learning about their unique challenges. Each trip opened her eyes to new perspectives and reinforced her belief in the importance of community-driven solutions. Along the way, she encountered inspiring individuals, teachers, activists, entrepreneurs, who shared her passion for making a difference. Their stories fueled her motivation and reminded her why she had embarked on this journey in the first place. Back home, however, not everyone was thrilled about her growing responsibilities. Some of her closest friends worried that she was taking on too much. "You're working yourself to the bone, Em," Sarah said during one of their rare phone calls. "When was the last time you took a break?" Emily sighed, knowing her friend was right. Between managing the existing program and planning the expansion, she rarely had time for herself. Even weekends were filled with meetings and emails. Still, she couldn't bring herself to slow down. There was so much to do, so many lives depending on her. How could she stop now? Determined to find balance, Emily decided to carve out time for the people and places that mattered most. She visited Mr. Thompson regularly, bringing him updates about the program and sharing stories from her travels. His quiet wisdom and gentle encouragement always helped ground her when she felt overwhelmed. She also returned to the diner occasionally, relishing the familiar sights and sounds that reminded her of simpler times. One evening, as she sat at her usual booth, sipping a cup of coffee, the diner's owner, Mrs. Jenkins, joined her. "You've come a long way, sweetheart," the older woman said with a proud smile. "I remember when you were just a shy girl washing dishes in the back. Look at you now, changing the world." Emily chuckled softly. "It doesn't feel real sometimes," she admitted. "Like I'm living someone else's life." Mrs. Jenkins patted her hand affectionately. "Maybe that's because you are. Not the old you, the new, stronger version. And trust me, sweetheart, the world needs more people like you." Those words stayed with Emily long after she left the diner. They reminded her of how far she had come since that snowy night when she bought dinner for Mr. Thompson. Back then, she had no idea that a single act of kindness would set her on this path. Now, looking back, she realized that every step, every challenge, every triumph had led her to where she was today. By late summer, the national expansion was underway. Communities across the country began implementing programs inspired by Emily's vision. Food drives, job training workshops, and educational seminars sprang up in cities and towns alike. Local news outlets covered the efforts extensively, highlighting the positive impact on families and neighborhoods. People started referring to Emily as the waitress who changed the nation, a title that both amused and humbled her. Despite the growing recognition, Emily remained focused on her mission. She knew that fame wasn't the goal. It was simply a byproduct of doing meaningful work. What mattered most was the difference she was making in people's lives. Whether it was helping a struggling mother feed her children or giving a teenager hope for a better future, those moments kept her grounded. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected challenge arose. One of the foundation's key partners, a major corporation providing funding for several projects, suddenly withdrew its support. Without their contributions, entire initiatives were at risk of shutting down. Panic rippled through the team as they scrambled to find alternative sources of funding. For Emily, it was a test of everything she had learned so far. Could she navigate this crisis without losing sight of her purpose? Could she rally her team and keep moving forward despite the setback? As she stood in front of the group, addressing their concerns, she realized something important. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It belonged to everyone who believed in the power of community. "We've faced challenges before," she told them, her voice steady despite the weight of uncertainty. "And we've overcome them because we work together. We'll figure this out too. Let's focus on solutions, not problems." Inspired by her determination, the team sprang into action. They reached out to smaller donors, organized fundraising events, and even launched a crowdfunding campaign online. To everyone's surprise, the response was overwhelming. Thousands of people, from strangers touched by Emily's story to longtime supporters of the foundation, pitched in to help. Within weeks, they had raised enough money to keep the programs running. The experience taught Emily an invaluable lesson. No matter how difficult things got, resilience and teamwork could overcome almost anything. It also reminded her of the incredible strength of human connection. When people came together with a shared purpose, they could achieve extraordinary things. As autumn settled in, painting the landscape with shades of gold and crimson, Emily reflected on the past year. From buying dinner for a lonely widower to leading a nationwide movement, her journey had been nothing short of miraculous. Yet, she knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would undoubtedly be filled with twists and turns, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. Little did she know, however, that fate had one final surprise in store, a twist that would redefine everything she thought she knew about herself and her mission. Winter was approaching again, and Emily found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed over the past year. The air grew colder, the days shorter, but inside her heart, there was a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Her journey from waitress to national leader had been full of challenges, triumphs, and moments that tested her strength. Yet, through it all, she had discovered something profound: purpose. Every decision she made, every step she took seemed to bring her closer to her true self. One crisp morning, as Emily prepared for another busy day at the foundation, she received an email from Richard Langston. It wasn't unusual for him to check in with updates or suggestions, but this message stood out. "Meet me at the headquarters at noon," it read. "There's something important I need to discuss." Curious, yet slightly anxious, Emily arrived at the office just before 12. Richard greeted her warmly and led her to the same conference room where they had first met months ago. The view outside the windows was breathtaking, the cityscape blanketed in soft snow, but Emily barely noticed. Her mind was racing with possibilities. What could be so urgent? Richard gestured for her to sit down, his expression serious but kind. "Emily," he began, leaning forward slightly, "you've accomplished incredible things since joining us. Your leadership has transformed not only this town, but communities across the country. But now I believe it's time for you to take the next step." Emily frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "I'm stepping back from my role at the foundation," Richard explained. "I've been doing this for decades, and while I'm proud of what we've built, I think it's time for fresh energy, a new vision, and I can't think of anyone better suited to lead than you." For a moment, Emily thought she had misheard him. Lead the entire foundation? Take over Richard's position? It sounded impossible. "Are you sure about this?" she asked hesitantly. "I mean, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I'm not sure I have what it takes." Richard smiled gently. "You already have everything you need. You've proven your ability to inspire others, solve problems, and stay grounded even when things get tough. This foundation is about helping people, and no one embodies that spirit more than you." His words stirred something deep within her. She had always doubted herself, convinced that she wasn't smart enough or experienced enough to achieve greatness. But Richard's faith in her was unwavering, and it made her wonder, could she really do this? After a long pause, she nodded, slowly. "If you believe in me, then I'll give it my best shot." Richard beamed. "That's all I ask. Now, let's talk about the future." Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into preparing for her new role. Richard worked closely with her, sharing insights and strategies he had learned over the years. Together, they reviewed budgets, analyzed data, and mapped out plans for the coming year. At first, Emily felt overwhelmed by the sheer scope of responsibilities, but Richard reassured her. "You don't have to figure everything out right away," he said. "Just focus on one step at a time." As word spread about Emily's promotion, reactions varied. Some were thrilled, praising her dedication and hard work. Others, however, were skeptical. How could someone without formal education or corporate experience possibly run such a large organization? Emily tried not to let the criticism bother her, but it stung nonetheless. Doubts crept into her mind, whispering that maybe she wasn't cut out for this after all. On particularly tough days, she turned to the people who had supported her from the beginning. Sarah reminded her of how far she'd come. "You didn't get here by accident, Em. she said firmly. You earned this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Mr. Thompson offered quiet encouragement, reminding her of the kindness she had shown him on that snowy night. Even Mrs. Jenkins chimed in during one of their chats at the diner. You've got this, sweetheart, she said. Trust yourself. Their words gave Emily the strength to keep going. She poured her energy into leading the foundation, focusing on the mission rather than the noise around her. Under her guidance, the organization continued to grow, reaching even more families and communities in need. New partnerships formed, innovative programs launched, and stories of hope multiplied. Then, one evening, as Emily was leaving the office late, she received a call from an unknown number. Curious, she answered. Hello, Ms. Carter, a voice asked. This is Laura Bennett from Good Morning America. We'd like to feature you on our show. Emily froze. A national television appearance? That was beyond anything she had imagined. Why me? She asked, stunned. Laura chuckled. Because your story is inspiring. From waitress to CEO of one of the largest charitable foundations in the country, you're living proof that kindness and determination can change the world. Though hesitant at first, Emily agreed to the interview. If sharing her journey could encourage others to believe in themselves, then it was worth it. The segment aired a few weeks later, and the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from viewers across the nation, thanking Emily for reminding them that anyone could make a difference. Schools invited her to speak, nonprofits sought her advice, and strangers sent letters expressing gratitude for her example. Despite the newfound fame, Emily remained humble. She continued visiting the diner, chatting with old friends, and staying connected to the community that had shaped her. To her, success wasn't about accolades. It was about staying true to who she was. But just as things seemed to be settling into a rhythm, another unexpected twist occurred. During a routine meeting with the foundation's board of directors, Emily learned that one of their flagship programs, a nationwide initiative providing free meals to children in underserved areas, was facing significant backlash. Critics argued that the program was too expensive and unsustainable, calling for its immediate shutdown. The news hit Emily hard. This program was close to her heart, born out of her own struggles growing up in poverty. Shutting it down would mean abandoning thousands of kids who relied on those meals to survive. Determined to save it, she called an emergency meeting with her team. We can't give up on these kids, she told them, her voice firm despite the weight of the situation. Let's find a way to prove that this program works, not just financially, but emotionally and socially. Let's show the critics why it matters. Together, they devised a plan. They collected testimonials from parents and teachers, gathered data showing improved academic performance among participating students, and launched a social media campaign highlighting the program's impact. Within days, public support surged. People from all walks of life rallied behind Emily, urging the board to reconsider. In the end, the program was saved, but the experience left Emily shaken. It reminded her that progress often came with resistance, and that fighting for what was right required courage and resilience. Still, she emerged stronger, more determined than ever to protect the values she held dear. As spring approached, bringing with it warmer weather and renewed hope, Emily reflected on her journey once more. From buying dinner for a lonely widower to standing at the helm of a national foundation, she had traveled farther than she ever dreamed possible. Along the way, she had learned invaluable lessons about kindness, perseverance, and the power of believing in oneself. Yet, even as she celebrated her achievements, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to do. Her story wasn't finished, it was evolving, growing, becoming something greater than she could have imagined. Little did she know, however, that the most transformative chapter of her life was yet to unfold, one that would challenge her in ways she never anticipated and redefine everything she thought she knew about love, family, and legacy. Spring had fully arrived, painting the world with vibrant colors. Flowers bloomed along sidewalks, birds chirped cheerfully in the trees, and the air carried a sense of renewal. For Emily, this season symbolized growth, not just in nature but in her own life. She had come so far since that snowy evening when she bought dinner for Mr. Thompson, Now, as the CEO of one of the largest charitable foundations in the country, she felt a deep sense of purpose. Yet, despite her accomplishments, something still felt incomplete. One sunny afternoon, as Emily sat in her office reviewing reports, there was a knock on the door. It was Richard Langston, holding a small envelope. He smiled warmly as he handed it to her. "This came for you today," he said. "It's from Mr. Thompson." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Though she kept in touch with him regularly, hearing from Mr. Thompson always brought back memories of where her journey began. Carefully opening the envelope, she pulled out a handwritten letter. The words were simple but heartfelt. "Dear Emily, I wanted to thank you once again for your kindness all those months ago. You reminded me that even in my darkest moments, there is light in the world. Because of you, I've found new joy in connecting with others, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. I hope you know how much your actions have meant not only to me but to countless others whose lives you've touched. With gratitude, Mr. Thompson." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she read the letter. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the reminder of why she had started this journey, to make a difference no matter how small. In that moment, she realized that success wasn't measured by titles or achievements. It was about the impact you had on people's lives. Later, that week, Emily decided to visit Mr. Thompson at his home. When she arrived, he greeted her with a warm hug and invited her inside. His house was cozy, filled with photographs of his late wife and mementos from their life together. As they sat by the fireplace sipping tea, Mr. Thompson shared something surprising. "You know," he said softly, "your kindness inspired me to start volunteering at the local library. I help kids learn to read now. It gives me a sense of purpose and it feels good to give back." Emily beamed with pride. Seeing how her small act of generosity had sparked a chain reaction of positivity reinforced her belief in the power of compassion. But the conversation took an unexpected turn when Mr. Thompson reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "This belongs to you," he said, handing it to her. Curious, Emily opened it and gasped. Inside were documents detailing a trust fund set up in her name, funded entirely by Richard Langston and Mr. Thompson himself. What is this?" Emily stammered, overwhelmed. "It's our way of saying thank you," Mr. Thompson explained. "You've given so much to others without expecting anything in return. We wanted to ensure you never have to worry about finances. Again, use it however you see fit, for yourself, for your family, or for your work." Emily was speechless. This gift was beyond anything she could have imagined. For years, she had struggled to make ends meet, juggling multiple jobs just to survive. Now she had the freedom to focus solely on her mission, to help others without the constant weight of financial stress. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Emily threw her arms around Mr. Thompson. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Mr. Thompson replied gently. "Just keep being the amazing person you are." In the weeks that followed, Emily used the trust fund wisely. She paid off her student loans, which she had taken out recently, to pursue online courses, helped her mother repair their old family home, and invested in expanding the foundation's programs. With newfound stability, she felt empowered to dream bigger than ever before. But the surprises didn't stop there. One evening, as Emily attended a fundraising gala hosted by the foundation, she met someone who would change her life in ways she never expected. His name was Daniel Harper, a journalist who had been covering her story for months. Unlike other reporters, Daniel approached her not with questions about her fame but with genuine curiosity about her values and vision. As they talked, Emily discovered that Daniel shared her passion for helping others. He had spent years reporting on social issues and advocating for underprivileged communities. Their connection was instant, built on mutual respect and admiration. Over time, their friendship blossomed into something deeper, a love rooted in shared dreams and unwavering support. For the first time in her life, Emily allowed herself to imagine a future that included happiness beyond her work. She and Daniel began collaborating on projects, combining his storytelling skills with her leadership to amplify the foundation's impact. Together, they traveled across the country, meeting families whose lives had been transformed by the programs Emily had created. One day, while visiting a rural community, Emily received news that brought both joy and bittersweet reflection. Richard Langston had passed away peacefully in his sleep. Though saddened by the loss, Emily celebrated his legacy, a man who had believed in her when no one else did, and whose generosity had changed countless lives, including hers. At Richard's memorial service, Emily delivered a heartfelt speech. "Richard taught me that kindness isn't just an action, it's a ripple effect," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "He showed me that anyone, regardless of their background, can create change. And because of him, I found the courage to believe in myself." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Emily didn't linger in the spotlight. Instead, she returned to her work, more determined than ever to honor Richard's memory by continuing the mission they had started together. Years later, as Emily stood on stage accepting an award for humanitarian excellence, she looked out at the audience and smiled. Her journey, from waitress to changemaker, had been unpredictable, challenging, and profoundly rewarding. Along the way, she had learned that true success wasn't about wealth or recognition. It was about touching hearts, inspiring hope, and leaving the world a little better than she found it. As she held the trophy aloft, Emily thought about all the people who had shaped her path. Mr. Thompson, whose loneliness had sparked her journey. Richard, whose faith had propelled her forward. Sarah, whose friendship had kept her grounded. And Daniel, whose love had given her wings to soar. Her story was proof that even the smallest acts of kindness could lead to extraordinary outcomes. And though her journey was far from over, Emily knew one thing for certain. She would spend the rest of her life spreading the same compassion that had once saved her.